Hello everybody, welcome to the live stream, and I've got to start off by apologising. I stupidly put in 1:30 as the start for the live stream in the YouTube schedule, so I know some of you, I just realised about 15 minutes ago that some of you were here at 1:30. Clearly we always do these at 2:30, but I think because it was payrolls today and the payrolls were coming out at 1:30, I had 1:30 in my head when I was setting it up, so I apologise again for that. Completely my fault. That one. So just if someone can confirm you can hear me, okay, and then we'll get into it. So as usual, we'll talk a bit about very briefly what's been going on this week, what to look out for next week. Then we'll get into the markets, looking at markets, because there's still a lot to look at. I should say, if it's a little bit quiet at your end, I think if you just check the YouTube volume slider thing, then hopefully that will make it a little bit louder. I'm going to get as close as I can to the microphone, because occasionally some people do say it's a bit quiet. So make sure you got the volume up at your end. I think the microphone I use for this cuts out any sort of background noise, but I think it can occasionally go quiet if I go too far away. So I'm going to make sure I'm close by. Right, let's just go through the risk warning and stuff first of all. As usual, if you've got any questions or any markets you want looking at, we'll look at our usual bunch of markets. But any other stuff, if you put it in the comments, I'll go back when we've looked at the markets and we'll pick out on different markets. Let's do the risk warning. This presentation is only for educational purposes. It does not contain and should not be construed as containing investment advice or an investment recommendation or an offer of or solicitation for a transaction in any financial instrument. David Jones and Capital.com accept no responsibility for any use that may be made of these comments and for any consequences that result. Spread bets and CFDs are complex instruments and come with a high risk of losing money rapidly due to leverage. 71.2% of retail investor accounts lose money when spread betting and or trading CFDs with this provider. You should consider whether you understand how spread bets and CFDs work and whether you can afford to take the high risk of losing your money. Okay, our special offer of the day. We always have a special offer from Capital.com. When we do these things, we're doing zero spread on the dollar against the Canadian dollar today. So if you're a client of ours, you can trade the dollar, Canadian dollar, with no bid offer spread. What was I going to say? Or if you're not a client, you can open an account in a few minutes, download the app, log on online and start trading that way. So that's today's special offer from Capital.com. Clearly go and check it out. You know, we only do these because of Capital.com. That's the YouTube channel. That's the trading platform. They need to pay me to do these. So if you go there and look at their stuff, that'd be great. Let's talk about important events for next week. Then we'll talk about the week that's been. Then we'll get into the markets. So Tuesday, 9th of February, we just had the payrolls today. Obviously, US non-farm payrolls, unemployment numbers came out an hour ago. I don't think they were that dramatic. We'll see what the impact was on the markets. I don't think it was that much of a shock. The expectation was for 50,000 jobs to have been added. 49,000 were added. I had a very brief look half an hour ago. Didn't seem to be that much movement, but we'll have a look in a bit more detail. So next Tuesday, the 9th of February, UK retail sales out in the morning. Could be interesting, of course, given the state of the UK's high street and many high streets at the moment where we have, economies in lockdown. Wednesday, the 10th of February, big day for inflation. China inflation and US inflation data, and next Friday UK GDP. There was a statement, wasn't there, from the Bank of England this week saying they expect a strong recovery in the UK. It put a real rocket under the pound yesterday. We'll take a look at that. But the official GDP figures out next Friday, so that will be interesting to see how that all comes about. Stock markets. So let's do our recap of the week. All-time highs in the USA. We seem to be saying that pretty much every week, but all-time highs for US stock markets. We'll take a look at those. DAX, when I was writing this about an hour and a half ago, the DAX was almost at all-time highs. Gold and silver, interesting week for gold and silver. We had that silver surge on Sunday night, Monday morning. We'll take a look at that. Gold has been really weak this week. I did a video on gold this week and we got filled on an order in gold, but it's been under pressure. So we'll take a look at that. I think it's interesting, still down here, gold, but it's been an interesting week for both. Silver's perhaps the more interesting, but we'll look at both of those in a sec. Bitcoin, you know, if we look at since the all-time high, it's been broadly sideways since that 42,000. I still think the top is in for Bitcoin, but I did do a video this week on the other coin. What's it called? Ethereum, and that was still going to all-time highs. We'll take a look at Ethereum as well as Bitcoin. Crude oil. I actually, you know, we do the trades on the trading account for the videos, and also I have obviously my own trading account. I did buy oil a week ago quite reluctantly because I thought it can't go any higher, and it's exactly what it has. It's at a 1-year high, the price of oil. So we'll take a look at that in a bit more detail. It's quite a fairly volatile week for currencies. Pound against the dollar was sliding until yesterday when the Bank of England said they expect a really strong bounce back for the economy. Euro is still weak. I wonder if there's a buying opportunity in euro dollar though. So we'll take a look at that. And the dollar index, I have been banging on about this for a few weeks now. I keep getting told not to mention it in the gold videos, because when I mention it in the gold videos, that's when people stop watching the video for some reason, because no one's interested in the dollar index. But we are seeing a comeback by the US dollar. So we are going to have a look at the dollar index as well today. Right, that's it. Let's get into it. So as usual, if you do have any stuff you want looking at, let's put it in the comments, and I'll read the comments. Actually, here's the dollar index. So let's start off with this. This is, even if you don't trade the dollar index itself, clearly what's happening with the US dollar has a massive impact on all sorts of markets. And I have been wondering, usually in the gold videos we do, are we going to see a comeback for the US dollar this year? I did actually buy the dollar index a couple of days ago because of this recovery, but it's very early days for the recovery. We're only a month into it, but we have the dollar index touched 104 in March last year, and it lost about 15% into January, and that's a really, if you look at it here, it's a really important levels down here. Sort of 88 to 90 is an important historical low for the dollar index, and I just wonder, is this going to be the great comeback story, the comeback kid, as someone has said? That's exactly what I think. Well, will we at the end of 2021 be looking back and saying what a great year that was for the US dollar? Who knows? But at the moment, we do have this little recovery chugging along. I ended up buying on the break of 91 earlier this week, because 91 had been a bit of a ceiling for the last 6 weeks with a stop. Actually, a stop below the low. So I've got quite a wide stop on the trade I did on that. But I just thought I'll get in and see if it can push a bit higher. Let's see. But the dollar, I think, has been interesting. Isn't it? Really interesting one to watch. So if you're not watching it, I think it's definitely well worth doing it, keeping an eye on it. But let's try and do these things in some sort of sensible order. So let's kick things off with should we do gold and silver? Let's do gold and silver first, actually. Let's start off with silver. We put that silver video out on Monday. It was a really interesting week for silver because, of course, we had all the GameStop stuff over the last couple of weeks, the Reddit stuff, and GameStop, what a surprise, has gone crashing back down. But there was talk the end of last week, and actually over the weekend as well. Last weekend, I put a few bits on Twitter that silver was the next target, that the Wall Street bets were going to be targeting, trying to buy silver ETFs. There was talk from silver coin dealers in the States over the weekend that they were running out of stock. So whether it happens or not, I would say who actually cares? But what it did do, we saw this gap open for silver on Sunday night. So last Friday, silver closed at about $26.90 down here. You can see on the chart. Opens at $28.50, so gaps about $1.50 higher, pushes up to 30, which, so very briefly, very briefly, silver pushed through let me get rid of the indicators for now, pushed through last summer's high by about 4 cents, and then promptly just collapsed again over the next couple of days. It's really interesting. I wondered actually now, is it a buying opportunity in silver down here? So it was a really interesting week. And again, it was whether it was, I remember there were lots of comments on Wall Street Bets. There were a few comments on our YouTube video saying was it a media manipulation that Wall Street Bets were buying silver? Whatever. But it was enough that it's quite interesting that the rumor of this was enough to make the price gap up on Sunday, although we lost those gains pretty sharpish. Anyway, so there's the silver chart. A bit of excitement in silver this week. But for me, I wonder if this is still a buying opportunity. We did have some silver trades in the account, and they got closed for a profit. was it 28.80 or 27.80? We'll have a look in a minute. And the price, sold off yesterday to briefly below 26. But for me, if I was looking at this recovery off the late November lows, I wonder if this is a buying opportunity in silver. I do quite fancy buying down here, and the question is, where would your stop go? The tightest I would want my stop, the other side of the late January lows, maybe even down here, the other side of the mid-Jan lows. But the trend, this recovery trend, is still up, and was still up even before we had the mania of the beginning of the week. So I think it's a really interesting market to watch silver from here. I think it is an odd one, and I don't think we'll see $30 in the next week. But I think it's an interesting market to keep an eye on. But that was the excitement. I think perhaps the more exciting market, definitely the beginning of the week, was silver. Now let's talk about gold. So I did this video. We do have some trades on gold. Let me show you. So we have a longer term. So they're all underwater at the moment. So we have one from the middle of January, where I bought at 18.34. And then we had one from the video we did this week that I'll talk about. I bought in at 18.25, and the market's currently 18.02. So we're a bit the wrong side on the gold trades. And of course, the problem is if we do a video, I always like to do a trade in the videos for the YouTube channel. And if it's not the right time to trade it, I just got to put an order in and hope we get filled in the order. So we did get filled in the order. This is what's happened with gold. Arguably, I think if you're an aggressive trader, and clearly nothing that we talk about in the live stream or on the recorded videos is financial advice. If you're an aggressive trader, I think it's a buying opportunity down here. And the reason I think that, let's bring perhaps the indicators back in. I'm more a fan of price action than indicators. We are back down. We're not back down there exactly, but we're back down to the area, end of November, where we saw sentiment switch for gold. The market traded down to 1760. It traded down yesterday to 1785, so we came within $25 of that low. If the price of gold is going to bounce from anywhere, then this is the place. So for me, if I was a buyer now, I'd be a buyer wherever it's trading now, 1802, with the stop loss the other side of 1760. Because I think if we do lose 1760, I think we're going to just pull back, at least back into these lows from April, around 1680. So I think next week could be a really interesting week for gold. But I would be, if I had to do a trade, I would be a buyer. And I don't think it's a terrible trade down here at all. But if it broke 1760, I'd be out of the trade. For those of you who are fans of RSIs, the RSI has gone oversold down here. And clearly this is dollar strength, I think, is the main driver here. We looked at that dollar index. It is dollar strength that's pushing gold down. So we've gone oversold on the RSI. 1760 needs to hold. Let's see what happens next week. So, so the trades I've got are underwater. So I'm losing about £215 so far on the gold trade. I've got stops in at various levels. I think I put a shorter term stop on the trade we did on the video this week at 1780. Longer term stop on the other position at 1745. So if it does break below there, I'll be out of everything and reevaluate it. But I think it's interesting down at these levels. So for me, I'll be looking to see if gold can squeeze a bit higher next week. Because the longer term trend is still up, but of course, we are a long way away. This is the trend going back to the 2018 lows. 2018, the summer lows, sorry, of 2018. We're a long way away from that trend line. It could definitely take some more selling off But I think this support, and it was the old highs in May as well. I think it's really interesting down here because I did think when we saw it break beginning of the year, let me just zoom it in again, beginning of the year here, I thought this was the breakout of the correction and away we go again. It hasn't worked out that way, but that's what stop losses are for, aren't they? So we'll see how that one works out. But a really interesting week. So for me, silver, the recovery trend is still going. Gold is a little bit all over the place, but big support at 1760. Let's see what happens next week. Stock markets. S&P 500 is still going up. What can you say? Just, from my point of view, I've got, a few trades on the S&P in my own account. It's just a buyer. I'm a buyer because the thing just keeps going up. So today, even as we're doing this, the S&P is at fresh all-time highs. Even as we speak, the market's making fresh all-time highs. We do have that recovery trend off the lows in March. We've got a sharper trend that I need to redraw a little bit. Looking something like that. That's it. That's the trend, isn't it, in the S&P? So for me, I'd still be a buyer. Even if we got knocked back 200 points from where we are now on the S&P, we're only back here to the lows from the end of January. So an incredibly strong market. Really, very difficult to argue with that sort of trend. It does, I think, reinforce the benefit of trading with the trend. I think so. There are plenty of people trying to go short and pick the top, and now and again you do get these dramatic sell-offs. But the easier side of the market is to be long. Why does someone keep spamming the comments with just saying text? Hang on, I'm going to block this user. I'm not quite sure what they're doing. Put user in timeout. There we go. Let's do that. There we go. Right. So really strong market. Same with the Nasdaq. I'm sure. Let's have a look at the Nasdaq 100. So the Nasdaq 100. Here we go. So it looks like it's not quite got there, the Nasdaq, but almost. It looks like it has pushed up to all-time highs today. So the last all-time high was the 26th of January at 13,614. It's traded as high as 13,627 today. So stock market's still incredibly strong. And I'd still be looking to buy the dips. If we look at the German stock market, the DAX, that was on the verge of moving out again to fresh all-time highs. Not quite. Again, the 8th of January, the DAX traded 14,135, traded 14,114 today, so it came within 20 points. So, but still strong. And finally, the Nikkei. I did say I was going to look at that and then forgot to look at it last week. I've got a trade on the Nikkei from December, and again, it's not rocket science. Most of the trades I do aren't rocket science. They're just trading with the trend. And look at the trend of the Nikkei. So the Japanese stock market, we had the old highs left from 2019, broke those old highs in November at 24,000 something, and we're now nearly at 29,000. So for me, in a trending market, I want to be a buyer in dips. I've got no interest in trading a market that's sideways so much. That's why I think gold for me is a harder market at the moment, because the short to medium term is pretty sideways. But there are markets out there that are trending, so there we go. That stock market's still strong. Let's take a look at, what did we do? Gold, silver, stock markets. Let's take a look at the pound against the dollar. Then we'll look at the euro. I think the euro is the more interesting market. Here's pound against the dollar. Again, I've got a few trades on that. The trend is still up since May last year. Pound against the dollar. It's been fairly quiet the last couple of weeks. But let me show you the moves in the last couple of days. It really did have a rocket put under it yesterday. Here we go. So this was yesterday. The Bank of England yesterday talking about the UK economy. So it was really weak into that, and then put an absolute rocket under it saying the UK economy expecting a strong recovery, blah, blah, blah. And the market was at 135.70 yesterday, and it's at 137.20 today. So it's moved 150 points. I'll still be a buyer on dips for the pound because the trend is up. It's really struggling at the moment with sort of 137.50. We keep pushing up to there, 137.50, 137.75. Can't get through. I think if we get a break of 138, we could see quite a bit more momentum for pound against the dollar. So that's an interesting market because the trend is still up, a little bit quiet the last couple of weeks. But the euro is, I think, perhaps the more interesting in the short term. And again, maybe there's a trade in the euro. Let's bring it up. Let's just take a step back to March. Let's just get rid of that line there. I'm not quite sure what that's there for. So let's, March, with the lows in March for the euro at 106-ish, trending up, accelerate away again in November, and then nothing much since this push in early Jan. The market's been selling off. But again, for me, because this trend here is up, I still want to be a buyer. It's just a question of where I buy. And if we go back and look at the bigger picture, we are getting near an important historical high for the euro. The 2018 highs are around about 125.50. But I do wonder, and I do think there's another push higher to come. So for me, I'm looking to be a buyer. The only question is, where does my stop go? Well, let's look at what's been going on today. So we had a sharp sell-off yesterday. These are daily candles we're looking at. A sharp sell-off yesterday. We've reversed a big chunk of that today, but not all of it. So again, I'd be a bit patient. But if you were going to be aggressive here, you could be a buyer with a stop underneath the low for the day so far, the other side of 1950. So about 70 points away from where we're trading now. But for me, I think it's a really interesting market to watch next week because we had so much consolidation and chopping around in this sort of area before it pushed higher into January of this year. So I do think the euro is going to turn around and we are going to see strength again. It's just how soon does that happen and where does your stop go? But I think for me, this is perhaps the interesting market to watch next week. So I'm looking to be a buyer. I'm probably not going to be a buyer just yet. I want to see it turn around for more than just one day. But if it does turn around and build a base, I would be targeting a run back up to these highs. It doesn't mean it's right, of course, but that's what I would be looking for. So I think euro against the dollar is maybe an interesting one next week. And then if we take a look at oil, it's absolutely, I think it's come off a bit today. No, it hasn't. It's still going up. This is incredible. I think it's incredible, this run in oil, because it just keeps going. Let's take the indicators off for now. So we had this run from November. So in November, the 1st of November, the price of oil was briefly below $34 a barrel. Today, it's $57 a barrel. That's an absolutely enormous move in 3 months. The price has gone up $23. What's that? About 60-70% rise in the price of oil. Incredible. So for me, I'm in, I'm long, I'm trailing a stop loss behind. Look where we are though for oil. We're back to levels not seen since the 21st of January 2020. The next immediate hurdle, it may be $60 a barrel for me. And it's an absolute phenomenal move in the price of oil. So if you have a look on the hourly chart, there it is on the hourly. And that's where you can see. Again, we have, breaks out through the old highs at 54. And it hasn't really looked back. So it's quite incredible what we're seeing the oil price doing. And it does feel like it's defying the outlook for the economy. I can't help thinking there's a big correction coming for the price of oil, but it's not happened yet. So for me, I'll be long. It shows why I think it's important to go with what the market's doing rather than going with your gut reaction a lot of the time, because the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent, as the old saying goes. Let's have a look at Bitcoin. So I do have Bitcoin. I'm not allowed to trade Bitcoin, as you know, because the UK regulator, and I'm a UK person who's covered by, as a client, UK regulations, so I can't trade Bitcoin. But I do have it saved here on my charts. Then we'll have a look at Ethereum. I don't pay that much attention to what goes on with the currencies. I know there's been quite a bit with Is it Dogecoin or Dogcoin, whatever it is? We don't cover that market though. Anyway, wherever you're based, so we can't look at that one. But I know, Elon Musk said he was going to leave Twitter, take a break from Twitter, didn't he? Then came back and just tweeted Doge or Bitcoin or something. Anyway, so for me, I have been wondering the last few weeks we've done this. Does that high at just shy of 42,000? Does it represent a short-term top in Bitcoin? My gut is that it does, but again, I should say, you don't go with your gut, do you? I think we looked at the trend last week on Bitcoin, and sort of 30,000 had been. There's our trend for Bitcoin off those lows, late October lows. Trends coming in at 26,000. I think I said last week, 28 to 30 had been good support, and it has been again, towards the end of January. So for me, I don't know. I think if it breaks 42,000, I would buy it. So I would, if it broke out to new all-time highs, I'd buy it, because we know when Bitcoin really gets moving, it can get an absolute move on, like all these cryptos can. But at the moment, I just wonder. I think like I was last week, like we saw, I think it was here last week we were looking at it, just after this surge, again, which was an Elon Musk-inspired surge, I think. I just wonder, are there lots of people who rode it up, saw it hit 42, and then saw it back at 30 and thought, if it gets back up near 42, I've got to be a seller. So I do think there's a lot of people waiting to sell ahead of 40, 42. But let's see. Let's see what happens. If it breaks 42, I will completely change my mind. But I wonder if we could be just a bit sideways in Bitcoin for now. Right, I need to have a look at what's it called? Ethereum. I need to log into another account. It's a demo account that's been set up with me because I don't have any access to Ethereum on my UK platform. So let's have a look at Ethereum. Oh, it's off again. Amazing. Look at that. We did a video on this yesterday. It went up last night, Ethereum. And away it goes again. So again, if I forget the fact that it's a cryptocurrency, it's a breakout again. And I think I said in the video that's on our YouTube channel from yesterday, if it breaks 1700, it looks like it could be interesting again, because we've got a breakout, and I'm a big fan, if we have these really strong trending markets, in just going with the break, but finding a sensible place for your stop. If we go back to the last breakout here, which was, where was that? Early Feb, when it broke through 1470, 1500 and moved a couple of $100 higher. For me, perhaps if we're looking at a target, then perhaps, I don't know, 1800, 1900. It's a bit finger in the air, isn't it? But again, incredibly strong. Again, I don't trade these things. Perhaps I should. But this is the hourly chart we're looking at. So I suppose if we were going with this breakout, the closest place I would have my stop loss, if I was a buyer now at 1732, whatever it is, the closest I want my stop is the other side of these lows, and they're just from 10 o'clock this morning, the other side of 1640. But I'd probably want to give it a bit more room than that and have them down at 1540. But it's quite interesting, the break on Ethereum this afternoon. So there you go. Still strong. It has outperformed Bitcoin in recent weeks. That's the daily chart on Ethereum. So if you're in it, good luck to you. But certainly seems to be strong at the time of recording. So what I'm going to do now is I'll just log back into my normal Capital account, and I'll go back through any questions that we had, and we'll look at different markets, any markets you want looking at. But I think so interesting markets to watch next week. I think that euro market is interesting. Euro dollar is interesting. Do we get the euro form some sort of base down here after a big sell-off? Clearly it's bouncing back a bit today because the US dollar is weaker. So that's an interesting market. The price of gold is interesting because it's been knocked back so much this week, down to 1800 now. Let's see what happens with that next week. That's interesting. Silver is an interesting one because of all the excitement we had, the Wall Street bets or not excitement we had this week. So and stock markets because they keep going up. So I think there's lots of stuff to watch going into next week. So let's see. Right, I'm going to read the questions and try and answer them. Any chance you could say what your profit and loss is for this week? I think if I go into here, I I think a lot of trades got closed out this week. So if we have a quick look, if I just look at trades closed over this week, I think that euro trade that we felt we'd had it forever was closed this week. So there was a few losses on the euro. What's that? About 230 losses there on the euro. 280 profit on the euro. 1300 profit euro. 150 profit euro. So we closed the longer term euro dollar position out for pretty good profit in the end. I can't do the maths in my head. For about 1,000 quid. We lost about 100 quid on that euro sterling trade. You can see the silver trades got closed out here. 400, 425. So there's quite a bit on silver, quite a bit of profit on silver. And then some losses, about 100 quid losses on the S&P. So I think a good week overall in terms of stuff closed. So that was the profit for the week. I mean, personally, the account balance is what I tend to watch up here, and the same for my own trading, because clearly that includes closed profits and any open profits as well. So personally, for my own trading, I keep a close eye on my account balance just to make sure it's heading in the right direction. But this week did clear out a lot of older trades that we'd had. So at the moment, got those gold trades that are losing at the moment. Could do with a bit of a bounce back there. The short Alibaba trade for last week that is underwater. Polymetal underwater. Facebook up 64 quid. Crude oil has been the best market for me this month on the account we use for our YouTube videos. So up 1,100 and something on crude oil. Cotton finally started moving this week. Really interesting market, cotton. Maybe we'll take a look at that. But that one finally started moving. Tesla, which is a trade that's been in for ages, up 1,000. And the S&P, an S&P trade from whenever that was, 17th of December. So yeah, there we go. What else have we got? Any updates for gold? We took a look at that. I have stock in GME. See, GameStop, it's really interesting, this GameStop. And, you know, GameStop was the one with all the hype, wasn't it? You remember the Reddit Wall Street bets. And I think, sadly, a lot of people have been really badly burnt on this one. It was always going to end this way, though. Always going to end this way. It was amazing how high it went. Don't get me wrong. Absolutely incredible. That on GameStop, you know, he went from about the 19th of Jan, about $40, to touch $4.75 on the 28th of Jan. And now we're back at 81. But I think it's sucked in a lot more people into trading who maybe didn't trade before. Trading is not about trading lunatic markets like GameStop. You know, trading should be much more sensible than that. But yeah, I think it is sad that I'm sure plenty of people will have bought, you know, in the 300s plus, and it's currently 81, so they're down 70%. Because again, you know, it's almost like an accelerated introduction to trading, I think, for a lot of people, that it's important to have an exit strategy, have a plan for getting out if things change, have a plan for managing a risk. And I think clearly, you know, lots of people maybe were doing it for fun, buying one or two shares, but it shouldn't be a surprise to any of us, you know, what happened in GameStop, you know, where lots of people buying it, but at some point, and clearly brokers were stopping people from buying it as well because of the unusual volumes. But at some point, when the buying stops, you know, it's going to stop going up, isn't it? So yeah, I think it's just going to be. I'm surprised it doesn't go lower actually than here, back to where it was before. But I just think, you know, when we were looking at it last week, I said maybe the better trade to do is to go short. But how do you go short something that moves 30% in a day, even more than 30% in a day, 50%, 60% in a day? Massively volatile market. But I think there are far more sensible markets to trade than GameStop. So hopefully if you traded it and it didn't work out, you didn't lose too much money. I'd say have a look at some other less volatile markets if you are still interested in trading. But I think the story of the squeeze, I think that's all gone now. That's what I think. But let's see what happens. But I'd be amazed if we did see any sort of short squeeze in GameStop. Okay, what else have we got? Silver. We looked at silver. Bitcoin. We looked at euro dollar. We looked at all of those. Neo. Let's look at Neo. We looked at those last week. Is that the electric car stock? I think it is, isn't it? Yeah, Chinese electric car stock. I think they were doing well. I remember looking, the trend was up, wasn't it, last week? Yeah, I remember looking at these. I mean, it hasn't moved a lot since last week. I think, again, for me, the better entry point, if we get a sell-off to where we were in December, if we get a sell-off to the low 40s, I think it looks a bit more interesting then, doesn't it? It's clearly strong, but for me, I'd still be sitting on my hands for a bit, and because if I didn't have a position, and looking to see if we can get in on a little bit of weakness on the but you can't argue with that trend. It's interesting, Tesla hasn't moved much either, has it? I think I told the story last year that just when my son went off to university in September, we bought 2 shares in Tesla, and I said we'll just sit on them and see what happens. And of course, we ended up buying at the high up here actually, in late September, and it has pushed higher. But it's been pretty boring, Tesla. So I do wonder if some of these Tesla, clearly big hype stocks like Tesla, when the broader market is still going up, but they're not going up, are investors thinking that actually maybe we're at full valuation? So maybe there will be something of a correction. I don't know. Let's see what happens. But I'd say with NEO, not massively dissimilar to what we're seeing in the Tesla stock price. So we looked at the NEO, we looked at the pound against the dollar. Let's take a look at sterling yen. So GBP against the yen. That's a much better, clearer trend than pound against the dollar. Sterling against the yen. That's really interesting. Great trading opportunity yesterday in hindsight. When it broke out late January through the September highs, came back down to it. Where's it gone? Yesterday, and bang, here we are at the highest level for sterling yen in almost a year. So it's really interesting up here. Great trend. Maybe we're going to have a bit of resistance coming up ahead of 148, but that's a much better market than pound US dollar. I should have been trading this one, not pound against the dollar. So for me, that trend is still strong. So I'd still be, if we get a bit of a sell-off next week in sterling yen, it could be an interesting opportunity to be a buyer. But absolutely cracking trend in that one, sterling yen. So an interesting market to watch next week. Time Technologies, they've got a patent for COVID treatment. I don't know if we list them. Maybe they're too small. No, we don't list them. I think there might be too much of a small stock, unfortunately. So don't do that one. Euro dollar, we looked at that. We looked at euro dollar. Orange juice, I don't think we do orange juice. Oh yes, we do, sorry. There we go, orange juice. We'll have a look at cotton after this as well. So I must admit, I've never traded orange juice. Here we go. You could, if I was trading it though. It's a bit sideways over the last year, isn't it? But I would be a buyer of orange juice down here at 107.90, whatever it is. We've got big support from 104 on orange juice, so I think it's an interesting one, orange juice, down at these levels. But what I did say was cotton. We do have that trade running on cotton, and it broke out again yesterday. Price of cotton. We did do a video about 3 weeks ago, which ended up calling the top. I think it did the video about there. And ended up being a short-term top, but cotton got a big lift yesterday. A lot of these commodities have been performing really well over the last few months, and that's the trend in cotton. So it's an interesting market. Could maybe do with a bit of a pullback now, but let's see what happens. What else have we got? We looked at orange juice, yeah. Short-term short on gold. The cannabis index, we looked at that last time round, I think, didn't we, or a couple of weeks ago? Cannabis. Here we go, the US cannabis index. It had this great trend. It's still got a great trend. Look at that. A really weird market, this one. I've never looked at it, apart from when we looked at it on here. But we've only got data going back to May 2020. So pretty, if I was looking at it here, it looks just pretty boring and just really choppy. And then early January it really starts moving when we finally break through the highs and it's just gone crazy. So if you'd have bought in, again, Harry hindsight trading, if you'd have bought in at 700, it's up what, 30%? Even since then, it's up 30% since early January. It's a big old move. So that's the US cannabis index, big gap up. You see the big gap there. So who knows why? But I'd be, if I was in, I'd be happy, and I'd make sure I had a trailing stop loss on it to take out some profits if the market starts selling off. I think if we get it bit of a sell off back to maybe where we were just a week ago, it looks interesting. But you can't argue with the trend on that one. It's really interesting. That I never look at any cannabis stocks, so I've got no knowledge at all. But looking at the momentum, you can't argue with it, can you? And the Russell 2000, so the US smaller caps, isn't it smaller caps index, or smaller than clearly the S&P and the Dow? Look at that, great trend again. Stock markets, so absolutely fantastic performance. Again, breaking out yesterday and today to fresh all-time highs. I think with these stock markets, at the moment at least, you just want to be a buyer on dips. And I think the problem is people want a more complicated answer than that. But, you know, I'm sure like a lot of people, I've been a buyer on dips of stock indices for a few months now, and it's been really easy trade, you know, and clearly you need to have stop losses and manage the risk and everything else. But I'd much rather buy a market like this that's moving than trade one that's perhaps a bit more difficult at the moment for me, something like gold that's really choppy. So, but great trends in the Russell at the moment. Could we check sugar? Yes, let's have a look at sugar. It's another one actually. We've got a trade on sugar. I think sugar is about maybe a bit more strength. It will break out to new highs for this recovery. It hasn't quite done it yet. This was the other commodity I was trying to think of when I was talking about cotton. Great trend in sugar from down here, from April, when it went from 0.09 to where it is now, 0.16. So it's nearly doubled. But again, sugar is a market that I trade. I don't know anything about sugar apart from putting 2 in my tea. But, you know, great trend in sugar. Broke out early this year through the highs from early 2020. If it can break out again, maybe next week is interesting. If it can break out through 16.5 and get some move on again. But a really interesting market and a great trend. So for me, I'm already long sugar and I'd be expecting further gains. So for me, another buy the dip one. Someone saying Brent crude oil and West Texas crude is absolutely overbought. It is, but it keeps going up, doesn't it? You know, these markets, you're right. If you looked at them from a traditional point of view, if you looked at them using things like RSIs, you absolutely wouldn't be trading them. You know, but it keeps going up. The RSI has been overbought on crude for the last $2.50. You know, so what do you want to do? Do you want to sit there and wait for the RSI? I'm not really a fan of things like RSIs. You're going to sit there and wait for the RSI to give you a signal, or are you going to trade the market? And me, I'm going to trade the market. Okay, Apple. Let's have a look at Apple. Has that sold off a bit recently? Not much, is it? Let's have a look at that one. So again, obviously we all know, you know, absolutely great trend on Apple since, you know, to wherever we want to go back to. But let's pick up on the trend just since last year in Apple and see what it looks like. Look at that. It's almost textbook. Almost a textbook trend in Apple. So the sell-off, again, are going back in time and doing the trade. The move down to 130 was a good opportunity. I'd still be a buyer now. If there's a buyer now in Apple, you know, it's only, a week, 2 weeks ago, the price of Apple made fresh all-time highs at 145. The closest I'd put my stop if I was buying now, the other side of these late January lows at 130. I'd probably be happier putting it down here somewhere at 125. But for Apple, again, it all comes back to the trend, isn't it? We can't argue with the trend in these markets, can we? Let's have a look at, someone said Amazon. I think Amazon's been a bit, I wonder what it did this week on Jeff Bezos saying he's going to leave. Not much by the looks of it. It's a bit sideways, Apple, isn't it? A little bit sideways. So we did have clearly a fantastic trend from March last year. Lockdown, of course, great for Apple's business. but a bit sideways since then, a little bit boring. So it's at the top of the, traded to the top of the recent range recently. Just a little bit dull at the moment, I think, until we get a breakout one way or another. Someone's saying, I want to know about WTI and Brent. If they're overbought, do I need to close your positions? Well, I would say I've got position in oil, and I'm not going to close it. But I think the only thing to do is, if you use things like stop losses, you might want to think about trailing your stop loss up. That's what I do, because there's no way you ever know to get out at the absolute top and get in at the absolute bottom. So for me, if I'm following a trend, I'll just keep moving my stop up behind the market. Yeah, but clearly you have to make your own decisions on things. But for me, I just try and ride trends as long as possible. The problem is you do end up giving back a lot of profit when trends change, but that's the payoff. Why are these people spamming that? Okay. OPEC has said they see the price averaging around 55. India not happy with rising oil prices. Okay. Oh, natural gas. Let's look at natural gas. It's been a really good week for natural gas. I do have a trade in my own account on natural gas. We did put an order in the natural gas video. Here we go. 26th of Jan to buy it at 255. And I think we just missed it, to be honest. Just missed the entry point. So end of January. It dipped here. It traded as low as 256. So I did have the order in at 255, but missed the trade there. And we've talked about this a bit in recent live streams. And I was saying I wondered if the moves we were seeing in January were the end of this correction in natural gas, which had a great run up since June. And we had lots of support at sort of 218 to 230. And it has proved to be the case. It's a really volatile market, natural gas. So it's gone from, it's moved more than 20% in the last couple of weeks, the natural gas price. And it's trading up at 3, or it touched 3 today. So for me, I don't think I'd do a trade here, but if we get a bit of weakness next week, if we flip this over to an hourly chart, and I missed out on the entry point of 255, then our recent trend looks something like this. But it's a fascinating market, natural gas. Not many people trade it. Not with us anyway. Not many retail traders trade it. But I think it's a really interesting market, and it's quite gappy though, and a bit volatile. But it'd be interesting, I suppose, if it's sold off back to 275 next week. But for me, I'm still bullish on natural gas. Do you wait for a stop to get filled, or do you get tempted to cut and run? I normally, 95% of the time, wait for my stop to get hit. There are times I've got a trade on coffee that has gone absolutely nowhere, and I've had the trade on for about 6 months. And I don't actually know why I did the trade, but I'll show you. This is the market coffee. I think I put the trade on. I don't even know where I did it. 6 months ago, here. I think it was here somewhere. And it's slightly in profit, but not as much profit as I thought it would be. So this week, I did actually move the stop up to just under where it's trading now, because I got bored of waiting for it to move. But 95, 97% of the time, I will just leave the stop there and wait to see if it gets hit. Someone's saying, can we... Oh, Peloton, that's a good one. Hang on a second. Let's have a look at that. We've got lots of questions coming in. We'll see what time it is. Okay. So we did Amazon. I've lost where I was, actually. Sorry. I think there's quite a few comments today, which is great. It's just taken a while to go through them. Crypto. Palladium. This is another one, actually. I've got a trade on, and it got really clobbered this week, Palladium. But that trend is still up, isn't it? It's not nowhere near the sort of moves we were getting in 2018 and 2019, and then massive volatility this year. But it is sort of hanging on to that trend, and a big sell-off. It wasn't this week, it was last week. Big sell-off, but arguably... Oh, GameStop is up 45%. I see. I spoke too soon about GameStop. Let's take a look at it in a minute. But Palladium, the trend is still definitely up, isn't it? Let's have a look. It's like crack cocaine, isn't it, of trading GameStop. up 40%. Hang on. So I wonder, it doesn't seem to be able to hang on to it though. It's interesting. Let's move away from it. Palladium, Spotify. Someone said, let's have a look at Spotify. Spotify stock down 1% today. Peloton. Let's have a look at Peloton because their results were out last night. And they were down last night, weren't they? Spotify, again, the trend in Spotify is up, isn't it? It's been perhaps a little bit boring over recent weeks. But you can't argue with the trend in Spotify, can you? It's arguably next week, it could be an interesting opportunity because 300 had been good support in early 2021. And it's pulling back there. I would be tempted if I probably wouldn't watch it. But if I really wanted to buy Spotify, I think it's interesting coming into next week to see what happens. See if it can bounce. Let's have a look at Peloton. So they got hit last night. Oh, no, it's not that much. It's not that bad, is it? So again, obviously, great trend. Peloton is the very expensive indoor cycling thing, isn't it? $20 back in March, $170 in January. Interesting. I don't know. Maybe. I think that's for me. That's probably one to leave for next week and see what happens down at 140 on Peloton. Okay, Palladium. We did Palladium. Natural gas. We did natural gas. Natural gas. Where's oil going? We looked at that. But did Palladium. Wheat. Let's have a look at wheat. There's lots of commodities today. I think, do we cover wheat? Oh, we do. Wheat, again, is another great trend. Although it has been falling out of it, you can see great trend since then, August. I do have a trade on wheat as well, I should say. I still think it might go higher from here, but clearly it's weak at the moment. Lots of support coming in from 192 through to 196 on wheat. So even though it's losing the trend line, I think just because something slips out of its trend line doesn't necessarily mean the trend is going to reverse. We might see the trend resume just at a slightly slower pace. So we'll see. We'll see what happens next week. Pfizer. Let's have a look at Pfizer. Of course, the old one of the vaccine companies. Share price isn't doing very well. Again, you could say I think an aggressive trade is to be a buyer down here. This was clearly when was it November when the vaccine was announced, wasn't it? Gaps up, fills the gap, and then eventually pushes up. I think on Pfizer, the aggressive trade would be to be a buyer, with stops the other side of 34. That would be the buyer. It'd be a buyer. But saying that, they had been in decline for a year or two. It's a sad state of affairs, isn't it? When you find the vaccine for COVID-19 and it doesn't even lift your share price. That would be a worry, actually, in all seriousness. If you think about, clearly, I tend to look at the technicals and the trend and all of that. But it's quite interesting to see how markets react to fundamentals. You would think, vaccine, cure, clearly they're obviously not going to make much money off it. But it hasn't done much to their share price. So maybe it'll slip even further. Let's come back to it in a week and see what it's doing. But I think if I was trading it, I could be tempted to be a buyer, but with a stop the other side of 34. Crude oil, we did that. Palladium, we did that. Natural gas. There's a lot of natural gas requests. Peloton, we looked at. Virgin Galactic. Yes, let's look at that one. So that's it's got the ticker SPCE, isn't it? It's the how best to describe it? Developing flight into space, and it's another one that has gone absolutely nuts. I think the last couple of weeks or so. It had a massive run when it came to the market anyway. It touched in March last year, touched $42, trades down to 12, and here we are now. And I have to say, it's not as extreme as GameStop, but I don't trade stocks like this because I have real problem trading something that will go from nearly $60 to $40 in a couple of days. So it's swinging around. It's that 30% or more in a couple of days. So for me, great fun if you're in it, but very hard to trade it sensibly, I think, these sort of things. But the trend is up, so if I had to do a trade on Virgin Galactic, the trend looks something like that, I'd be a buyer. And the most aggressive place I'd put my stop loss would be the other side of 47, the lows late on the 2nd of February. But it's more interesting if it gets back to the low 40s. But I wouldn't trade it anyway for me, because it's too volatile for me. It might be different for you. Trailing stop losses is absolutely a mess. You can use Fibonacci's. I think Fibonacci is absolute rubbish. It's my own personal opinion. Absolute waste of time. If you don't know what Fibonacci is, I'd say don't waste your time looking at it. But each to their own. If you make money using Fibonacci, good luck to you. Any thoughts on GlaxoSmithKline, GSK? So another drugs company. GSK. Let's have a look at them. Really weak, isn't it? Look at that. GlaxoSmithKline, £12.55. May last year, £17.50. Wow. It's doing terribly. GlaxoSmithKline is back to its lowest levels for 2 years. 3 years. We're in 2021, aren't we? 3 years. 3-year low on GlaxoSmithKline. So I suppose if you were a long-term value investor, it's maybe interesting. For me as a trend follower, not so much. But interesting if we see it. Because historically, down here, we're going back to 2015 down here. 2015 here. 2018 here has been a big turning point for Glaxo. So the market has seen value in their shares down at these levels. So that's an interesting one to come back to or keep an eye on in the weeks ahead if you're a longer term investor. But considering that stock markets around the world are making all-time highs, if your share price is making a 3-year low, that's not a good sign, is it? Let's see, what else have we got? Crude oil, Glaxo, yeah, we looked at that. Alibaba. We're short Alibaba, aren't we? From last week. Let's have a look at Alibaba. I think they had the results last week, didn't they? I am still happy to be short on that one, to be honest with you. So we went short a week ago, whenever that was. About what's the date today? The 5th. So we've been short about here. So for me, I'm quite happy to stay short. I think the stop, where's the stop on the trade? The stop is at 275. So the stop is, it's above these highs. It's quite a tight stop. So it has bounced back this week, but it hasn't taken out the high from earlier in January. So let's see. Actually, to be honest, looking at the longer term picture, that was a bit of a stupid trade because the long term trend is still up. So yeah, maybe a bit of an over exuberant short trade that last week. But for me, maybe we'll see it sell off to 220 again, and I'd be a buyer down there at 220. But yeah, if it breaks to 275, I'll have to throw the towel in on that short. Let's see what happens next week on Alibaba. Let's come back to it. GameStop needs time. You must wait. Everything comes to him who waits, apart from maybe $10,000 a share GameStop stock price. Pfizer, we looked at Pfizer. I think we're nearly done. Johnson & Johnson. Let's look at those. Johnson & Johnson. I mean, lots of these US stocks, should be in good uptrends at the moment. We've got the S&P hitting all-time highs. You'd expect the same. I think that's interesting, Johnson & Johnson. So for me, from a chart trading perspective, we've got the breakout here that happened earlier in the year through the April 2020 highs at 156. So the market breaks out, sells off, pushes up. I would definitely be looking to be a buyer. Sells back. So for me, if I was gapped up today, I don't know, did they have results out today or something? Whatever. So for me, I would be a buyer, and I would put my stop, the closest I'd put my stop loss, the other side of this low, but that's too close for me. I'd probably go the other side of 156, the breakout level. But it's really interesting, isn't it? Let's have a look at the gap today. There's the gap up today. So I don't know if they had results last night or today, but clearly something's happened. If they sell off, I'd still be looking to be a buyer. But that's an interesting one. Yeah, we looked at gold. We looked at gold. When I start buying something, there's always the opposite direction. What's this? I think you could be referring to the spread. Yeah, all markets have a spread. So if I want to buy, actually, if I look on a different thing, it'll show you it better. So if I look at silver, there's a price to sell and a price to buy. So all markets have a two-way price, a price you buy at and a price you sell at. And that's just markets. That's how they work. So you're always usually a little bit behind whenever you place the trades. Yeah, because that's how markets work. So it's not a conspiracy against you. Don't worry. For those of you who missed, we did cover gold earlier. When we finish this, the recording will be available. And I'm going to start. What I'll do, I'll just put up my contact details. And then I'll cover the last few questions. Don't forget, we launched, if you're in the UK or Ireland, we launched spread betting last year. So you can trade tax-free. So go to Capital.com to find out more about that. Go to Capital.com to find out more about the company. You can drop me an email. I can't do financial advice, obviously, but any questions about trading, drop me an email, david.jones@capital.com. And you can follow me on Twitter at Jones the Markets. And of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel. I forgot to mention that. You're watching this on YouTube. If you hit subscribe, if you haven't subscribed, we do 3 or 4 videos a week on various markets. So if you're subscribed, you'll get to hear about them. Is technical analysis any good in your opinion? Yes. In my opinion, it is. I am a technical analyst. But I think a lot of it is rubbish. I'm not a big fan of... I think Fibonacci's rubbish. I think Elliott Wave's rubbish. I'm a big fan of trading with trends. Markets trend. So I'm a big fan of trading with the trend and looking at support and resistance and not making it overcomplicated. So that bit of technical analysis in my many years of experience is useful. Right, Ryanair, and we'll look to wrap things up in the next few minutes. And we'll do it all again next week, of course. This time next week, or 2:30 next week. Ryanair, it's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting it's up there. We're actually, Ryanair, so European low-cost airline, is back up to where it was just before the pandemic broke. So it did trade down to £8 a share. I think it's £8, isn't it? Or is it €8, whatever it is. And it's back up here. I suppose it's really interesting. It's back. I would not have thought it would look like that. I suppose if I was holding it, I might be tempted to make sure I had a fairly tight take profit order if it starts to falter up here. I think if it breaks 17, if Ryanair moves to new 12-month highs, given the state of worldwide travel, that's the market going against the fundamentals and would be a strong buy signal. I think if it broke through 17. So yeah, still strong up here. But it'd be interesting to see what happens and if it can break through those new highs. So really, really interesting one to look at. Okay, that's it, I think. I think we're going to start wrapping things up there. Someone's asked, is there any difference in spread betting or CFD trading? Not really. Spread betting is tax-free. So with spread betting, if you make money, you don't have to pay any tax on it. With CFDs, contracts for difference, I can speak from a UK point of view. I don't know the situation in other parts of the world. CFDs are taxed the same way shares are taxed. So if you made so much over your capital gains allowance in the UK, you'd have to pay tax on CFD profits. With spread betting, you don't pay. You don't pay tax. So that's the difference. Right, we'll wrap things up there. There is lots of educational stuff. Someone's asked about teaching and mentoring. There's lots of educational stuff on our channel, so have a look there. I am in the process of putting together a course. I am writing it now. So if you subscribe to us on YouTube and follow me on Twitter, you'll hear about that. Hopefully it will be done in the next month or so. So you'll find out about that. What currency pairs do you think are good to trade? I think any of them. Anything that's moving. We looked at the euro today, euro US dollar. It's a really interesting market going into next week. I wouldn't trade the more obscure markets. I think if you stick to the more mainstream markets, pound against the dollar, sterling yen, someone mentioned today, we looked at that really interesting market, euro dollar. I think there's loads of opportunity. But we'll wrap things up there. As I say, any questions, drop me an email. Go to Capital.com if you want to open an account, try a demo account, download our app, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that's it. We'll wrap things up there. Thanks very much for coming along. I'm sorry about the mistake for the time at the beginning. Completely my mistake. They will be 2:30 every Friday going forward. Hopefully you can make it next week. Have a good weekend and good luck with your trading.